Welcome to The Claw. I'm Eric Holtzclaw, Chief Strategist at Liger. The Claw is the marketing podcast for C-suite executives. Today, I am joined by Anita Toth. She is the Hidden Revenue Hunter, which I think is one of the best titles I've heard in a long time. Anita, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, I'm happy to be here, Eric. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to a really great discussion.
So Hidden Revenue Hunter, it sounds like a series on television.
Yeah, I know. And it sounds, one of the challenges with it is it sounds like it's just around sales. But it's not.
Okay.
That's always the assumption.
So it's just as tricky as a television show because it could be something else.
And like the plot twist, right?
Right.
The plot twist is the hidden revenue is actually in your customer base.
Interesting. Yes.
Yeah.
And I wrote an article several years ago around that concept because when people think about sales, they often think about net new. Like who else can I go talk to? What's the new person I'm going to bring in? What is that new whatever? But there's so much opportunity within your current portfolio and those people already know you. And hopefully they trust and and want to do more business with you, right?
The other thing is they've already taken the heavy cognitive and emotional step in trusting that you can help them solve whatever problem they came to you with.
Yes.
And so that equity is already there in that relationship. And it's how do you leverage that? And of course, we're talking in the short term, there's medium term, and there's long term. It's not just, how are the first 30 days and then we abandon you. It's the relationship changes in the first 90 days, in the first, 6 months to a year, and then year plus. And so it's figuring out how do you, continue to develop those relationships so that the customers feel that they made the right decision to buy from you in the first place. And that's really the challenge. That's also where the hidden revenue exists.
Yeah. And Don Draper from Mad Men, not a real person, but he classically was known for that the day you sign your client is also the day you start to lose the client.
Yeah.
And so thinking of that mentality and changing it, because he was a relatively negative person, right? What else can we do for that client? Like, how can we make them excel? So as the only hidden revenue hunter I've ever met, talk to me a little bit about your approach. So where are some of the places either that you've seen companies fail in this category or that they could do better? I mean, they really do. We focus so much on the beginning of that relationship. So give me some hints and tips, some things that we should be considering beyond that initial signature on the statement of work or client who paid us money.
So the first thing, another plot twist, is that your relationship with your customers is actually emotional. It is not rational. Yes. We like to think that, I chose this product because of X, Y, Z. I am Canadian. So.
And I'm Southern, so I might say y'all occasionally. So,
so for X, Y, Z or ABC, or a service, product or service, it doesn't matter. But really, it's emotionally driven.
Yeah.
So I have a problem, and that problem can be I want, something that brings me more status. I have something that's really causing me frustration and anger. We're looking to solve at the basis an emotional problem. And so when customers first sign, their hope or their excitement at you being able to help them with that is at its peak.
Yes.
And then depending on what you do, and there's one company I will say does a phenomenal job at this, regardless of what you purchase from them. I'll come back to them in a second. What they do is they keep that high. They reinforce that, yes, right off the bat, you made the right decision to purchase from us.
Yeah.
But what most companies do is they automate these early days, which is fine, but they don't automate with the intention of keeping that emotion high.
Interesting.
And we have all done this where you buy something and then it's like a plummet off a cliff into what's called buyer's remorse.
We call it the pit of despair around here.
Pit of despair.
So we spend the first 6 to 8 weeks with clients very intensely. So we're like, and we're doing all kinds of fun stuff. We have a discovery session and we're looking at logos and we're talking about all this. And then we get to the end of the 6 weeks And now it's time to do the hard work, which is build all the foundational. And so, and I call it, my team has asked me to start calling it the valley of opportunity, but honestly, it's the pit of despair, because the client is like, but we were doing all these fun things. And we're like, yeah, but now we're building the house. And so keeping that emotional high and getting them to the other side of it, because if we can get them to the other side, they're ecstatic. But there is this like period that you have to worry about. And every company runs into that. You know, it's and I love that you talk about purchasing being emotional. I ran a research company for a long time. And the first thing we would ask a customer is like, hey, would you buy this or would you do this? And they would always say, yes, if it was the right cost or price or whatever. No, it is not. Money is never, ever, ever the thing.
Nope.
Because we find money for stupid stuff all the time, right? Like you'll spend money on stupid things all the time because it made you feel good or it solved a big problem or whatever. So getting underneath that's really important. So talk to me. How do you work with companies to determine how to keep those customers, you know, their news customers happy and high and excited?
One of the first things, and I will now reference the company that I'm talking about.
Yay, cliffhanger.
Huge,
yes, good.
A huge company. I'm sure most people have heard of it. Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon, I have purchased because I have a business. So I have used several of their products, not just, you know, buying from the marketplace. And every time, I have like 4 different examples. Every time I sign up for one of their business services, the first thing I get is an email. Okay, that's the automation piece. But what they have built in, and this is so critical, is that reinforcement that I made the right decisions. These are the primary questions you might be asking yourself. Here are the resources. Have a look at these. And then, you know, we're here to support you. And here's the information you need if you need a little more help.
Yeah.
That right away makes you go, wow, this is great. Versus I've gotten other, you know, I've signed up with other products and services, and then all they do is talk about themselves in it.
Right.
Well, we do this and we do that. And then I'm like, well, where am I supposed to go first? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
I don't like already I went from hopeful when I clicked on that email to confused to like, what am I supposed to do? So one of the big things we do with our clients is this idea, getting them to flip their thinking and realize, put yourself in the customer's shoes, because we've all been customers. We all know what this buyer's remorse is or pit of despair. We all know what it's like to be hopeful and then very quickly have those emotions dashed. And, you know, once you've hit that pit of despair, buyer's remorse, really, really hard to come out.
Yeah.
And often the seeds of churn, so a customer deciding to leave, they're planted right there, sometimes within the first hour or 2 after becoming a customer. So that's the most important thing that we do. And it sounds like, okay, well, what about all the other things you do? If we are going to retain these customers and get that hidden revenue and find those pockets, we've got to start the journey the second that a customer decides to become a customer. And it is emotional. It's rational as well, but really the primary driver, if you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're disappointed, those are all emotions. And then that drives you to go, to heck with this. I'm out of here. I'm not going to deal with this anymore. Boom, customer gone. And all those hidden revenue opportunities, walk out the door with them.
At the same time. So to get to the hidden revenue, I still have to have the customer, right? Like I can't find the hidden revenue if I don't have the person to talk to about for hidden revenue. So we want to protect that relationship early and often at the beginning, early and often.
Right.
Yeah. And Amazon's been, you know, even from a consumer perspective, always a really good example. Like in their early days, because I'm old enough to have been like a very first Amazon client, and that you would order a book and you would order it and say, oh yeah, send it to me by ground. And then they would send it to you next day, or they would include a bookmark, or they would do something else. And you're like, and I remember one time I needed to return something to Amazon. I don't return things often. And it wasn't worth the effort for them to then get it back. They're just like, just keep it. We'll refund your money, you know? And those kind of stories you don't hear as often, you know? But then you do run into like Chewy is a good example on the pet side, you know, the things that they do. You hear those stories all the time. And then they get free marketing from people like us who talk about them when we're They didn't pay us to do that, right? That's great.
So I wanted to say you're going to put the effort in one way or another.
Yeah.
So you're either going to put the effort in to now try to either save those relationships that are, on fire, the customer's upset, they're either deciding to leave and starting to make the motions. You're either going to put all the work in there, or you can be proactive and put the work into building these emotional touch points. So like you said, okay, great. The first 6 weeks being client, we're very similar. There's all this sort of fun and the kickoff, and we do all of that. And then it gets tough. Now it's time to get down to work. So what are the places or the milestones where we can try to bring back those feelings? So types of celebrations. One of the things that I personally do for my business and for my clients as well is building in, and you don't do this for everybody. I've got to be clear. This is your top tier customers. I actually send a card that is wax sealed on the back, handwritten.
Oh, wow.
Just I appreciate you. And it's not right after the sale. Yeah. It is unexpected. It comes at the 6-week mark when things are starting to become difficult.
Yeah.
Those are small things. Like whoever, A, gets a card in the mail, B, from a company, B, handwritten, and then I wax seal it on the back.
And what we do in Liger land, so I don't know if you saw, so this is my Liger mug and it has my name on it. And so once we've been working with a client, typically around 90 to 120 days, they all receive a box, and the box has a Liger mug and it has their name on it. And because we always talk about them, we want to be part of a team. Like, we don't want to be a partner. We want to be a team that's working together. So they see us with our own mugs, and then they get their own personally branded mug about 90 days in. That's one of our kind of surprises.
And it's that personal branding, Eric. That's because we've all gotten tons of swag, and you look at it and you go, I have no use for this.
I do not need another tumbler in my cabinets.
Right. Or t-shirt or hat or socks. I've gotten like all of those things. But with my name on it, that becomes special. Yeah. And really, it's such a small lift.
Right.
But yet it has a massive impact in terms of that emotional piece, making you feel like we're part of a team, making you feel like you are special because your name's on it.
And your customers are special. Without your customers, you don't have a business. Fantastic. So I love that. We're going to go to the commercial break. And when we come back, now we've surprised and delighted them along that first 90-day track. I want to talk a little bit more about, okay, so now how do I find some of those opportunities for hidden revenue while I'm watching the series, The Hidden Revenue Hunter, which should just totally be its own thing. So you're listening to The Claw, talking to Anita Toth. She is the Hidden Revenue Hunter, and we will be back in just a minute.
The Claw podcast is brought to you by Liger. Liger is a hybrid marketing firm combining a brand strategy consultancy and a production house that offers the full range of content and creative services. We can be your entire marketing department or your entire marketing department's favorite people to work with. We save the world from boring, broken marketing by putting businesses in brand therapy so they can express their most authentic, memorable selves. And then we share their story so they can be known. For more information, visit ligerpartners.com and follow us on our social media platforms.
You're listening to The Claw. I'm Eric Holtzclaw, Chief Strategist at Liger. The Claw is the marketing podcast for C-suite executives. I'm talking today with Anita Toth. She is the Hidden Revenue Hunter. She and I talked in the last segment about how important those initial sort of customer experiences are. You know, the customer's made this important decision. They've decided to part with their money to build a relationship with you. And how do you foster that in that first period of time such that they're going to stay? Gave us some really good hints in that first segment. Anita, as we move along, so we've gotten past that, 90 days, out of the pit of despair, those types of things. What are some ways that you see that work to start identifying this hidden revenue that you're hunting for?
Yeah. So I'm all about segmentation.
Okay.
And this is really clear. I touched on it in the first segment that we talked. it becomes important now to start identifying sort of your top tier from your nurture, because you're always wanting to nurture, but let's face it, time is limited, and not all of your customers, as much as you love them, are going to be the ones that you can really develop deep relationships with.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, all of this has to be tied to money.
Right.
It's great to talk about an emotional journey and all of that, but we need to see the dollars. So in upselling, in cross-selling, in renewals, positive word of mouth marketing, and referrals. Now, the referrals piece is the one that I focus on the most, because it's the one that companies tend to use the least. And yet we know if I were to refer you, Eric, to somebody, let's say somebody I've been working with or a product I really like, you are much more likely to convert, not only faster, but stay longer, because you and I often are demographically, firmographically similar.
Yes. Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is really the key piece, is starting to identify who are your best possible referrers, who are the ones that you can nurture. Maybe you start seeing early signs. The best way to do this, honestly, you're going to have to do some data analysis, and it also helps with customer interviews. Never hurts to speak directly to your customers, ask them the same questions so that you can start seeing psychographically how they think differently, why they do what they do. And that's easy enough. You already have a set of customers that are your top tier. How are they fundamentally different than the customers that don't stay very long or the customers that churn out?
Yeah.
So really you're comparing those two groups to find what are those differences that we can then start looking for and identifying in our newer customers so that we can nurture them into those, into that top tier.
Yeah. And understanding the grouping of those personas, like those people, like what are the words they use? What do they care about? How are you going to influence them? And what I love about you talking about with those referrals is we talk about 21 touch points to get someone potentially to conversion. And from a marketing perspective, traditionally, you can do display ads and content and all those kind of things. But the point that will tip them over, and it's not by itself, it has to be done in concert with other things, is for a person they know to also say, hey, I've worked with that company, I've thought of this thing. And this happens to us all the time. Like I'll see a product, it comes up in my feed, and then I run into a friend and the friend's like, yeah, I just used that product or that service and it's amazing. And you're like, well, I've been seeing them everywhere. I should try them out too. So thinking about all these things, and if they said, I've been thinking of this product or service, you might do it, but you'd still go explore it. And if not all the stuff is out there, then you may not, you're like, well, it was good for you, but maybe it's not good for me. So you want to give yourself the greatest opportunity to get that person to be that referral. That's an important aspect. And so referrals, so the hidden revenue you're talking about there, again, is still net new, right? Because I might refer somebody that's a brand new client. So how are you going to get more money out of my pocket, Anita? Like I've been working with you for 6 months now. What are you going to do to make me cough up a few more dollars?
So this is where it's important to know your personas and what matters to them and what their challenges are with their business at those particular periods of time.
Yeah.
Right. So if let's say you have 3 different personas, one of them is, the easiest, we'll just go by growth stages, startup, growing, mature.
Okay. Yep.
They're all going to have different issues. And it's figuring out how you can help solve some of the problems that are around the primary solution you sell.
Yeah.
So for a startup, that's going to look very different than a mature company. And these are really your upsells and cross sells. That's what it is. And if you don't, because, I certainly, I don't do marketing. That's your thing, Eric. I'm on the customer retention side. So you and I might partner.
Right. Yep.
I can then introduce and say, hey, listen, this is Eric. This is what he does. And I notice in working together that when, clients of ours get to this certain point, that really they can benefit from marketing services like yours. So it doesn't mean that I necessarily have to build those out and bring those solutions in-house. Partnerships are one of the best ways to do that. So that can either be with another agency, that can be with a vendor. But what it does then is it takes that load off of your customer's shoulders to now go out and vet. Because again, in many sense, it's a referral. It's a transfer of trust.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I trust Anita. I've been working with her for 6 months. She says when her other clients get to this point, this is what they need. I can see the reasons why I would need this. Oh, Anita trusts Eric. Okay, well, let's have a conversation with Eric and see where that goes.
Yeah. Nice halo effect. We talk about the halo
It
effect.
is.
So and understanding when you should white label something versus just hand it off. So like, is it something that's really part and parcel to what you do, a segment, or at what point you're like, no, this is not my charter. I need to just introduce a new partner, let them establish that relationship separately. And it is interesting because you'll find your clients may put you in a box and you could provide more. And so by getting outside that box, you can do it through a trusted partnership. You still get to stay in the relationship and get potentially more work out of the fact that that's happened, but you're not trying to confuse them. We had one client when I owned the research company who just thought we did focus groups, and we only did focus groups rarely. We always did one-on-one interviews, and we could not convince them to hire us for anything other than focus groups. And I was like, 95% of our portfolio is one-on-one interviews, and you want us to do focus groups. I do not understand why. And just think, no, you're a focus group company. I'm like, no, we're not. Right. So thinking about a lot of what you're talking about ties into the concept of, human beings, even though we want to be very cut and dry or a lot do, we're emotional beings, right? Mm-hmm. So like, if you think about customer emotion, how does that tie into the work that you're looking at?
Well, very heavily in terms of developing those relationships. Again, the longer, and I want to be clear, you can retain customers sometimes because you're sort of the only option. It doesn't mean that they're happy, right? They might be renewing.
And if you're the only option and people aren't happy, there'll be another option immediately.
Eventually, And then as soon as that other option becomes available on the market, they jump ship.
Right.
So I like this concept, and it's that customer emotional journey. So marketing and sales is like dating. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yep.
It's tactical. It tends to be short term, even if, it's a complex sale and it takes months to even a couple of years, 1 to 2 years. It is still bounded by time on the whole, and much more tactical. They sign up, that's your wedding. Then you have your honeymoon where you're trying to, are the expectations that were set in marketing and sales, are they going to be realized during this honeymoon? If not, then you're setting the seeds for them to leave. But really what we're talking about, this is the marriage phase.
Yeah.
And what you do at the beginning of a marriage is going to be different than a couple of years in versus long term. So if you can see it that way, that this is a long-term relationship we're building, and those tactical things that worked in marketing and sales in the beginning are not going to work now as a customer.
Yeah. Yep.
And that is the key piece that I try to get people to see. We get so caught up in like metrics and, tactics and funnels and all of this stuff that you got to realize you're taking people on an emotional journey. Yeah. So the faster that you can identify where those points are in that customer journey where they could fall into that, buyer's remorse or negative emotions, the faster you can do that, the more that you can then keep them in a sort of, I don't like to say satisfied, but they at least feel some sort of loyalty to your company. There's going to be problems. All relationships have problems, but it's how you handle them. And then there's the opportunity. We talked referrals, renewals, positive word of mouth marketing, which is like free marketing, like it's the best kind there is, and then upsells and cross sells. So that's how you tie very quickly to revenues.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And in our world, thinking about what's the brand promise? What's your brand promise? Yes. And so our brand promise is that we work to the companies we work with, we want them to be known. I mean, that is our tagline. That's everything. Our process is called the Be Known process. And so along the way, when we're thinking about retention, we're thinking about the customer emotional journey, are we fulfilling the original brand promise, which is to make them be known?
Right.
So, and how do we pull that back and think about it again? And is this thing we're doing going to do that? Because that's the reason they should be working with us. They're, a second or third player potentially in a market, and they want everyone to know who they are, right? So they're working through that. Well, very, very cool. So how do people find you're not a hidden revenue hunter, are you?
No,
How do people what's the best way for them to reach out to you and to connect with you on all your great thinking on customer retention?
My favorite place to hang out online besides Netflix is LinkedIn.
Nice. All right.
So you can find me over there on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I'm usually there 4 or 5 days a week. I actually like LinkedIn. I'm one of these strange individuals, but feel free, reach out, mention that you heard me on the podcast, and let's chat.
Very nice. Well, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Eric. I had a lot of fun.
So you've been listening to The Claw. I'm Eric Holtzclaw, Chief Strategist at Liger. The Claw is the marketing podcast for C-suite executives. We talked today with Anita Toth. She is the hidden revenue hunter, which I totally think should be pitched as a Netflix series. We're going to do that together. And until next time, thanks for tuning in.